Gentleman from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I yield time to my colleague from Florida, I'd like to record myself for 15 seconds. Mr. Speaker, I want to recognize my colleague, Mr. Putnam and Mr. Costa, for their bill, the Safe Feast Act, which I was the original co-sponsor, which got rolled into this bill, and it was a great help when they did that. And I'd like to yield as much time as he may consume to my colleague from Florida, Mr. Putnam.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend from Illinois for his leadership on this issue and his original co-sponsorship of that Safe Feast Act, which has had a number of its key principles incorporated into the bill that we're debating today. I rise in support of the bill that we're debating today. It is a bipartisan bill built on a bipartisan effort and a model that could and should be followed for the other big issues facing this Congress. It's unfortunate that the process that was taken did not adequately include our Agriculture Committee, and I would hope that as we move this issue forward that it will continue to improve upon that, because it is important that our Agriculture Committee and our representatives from rural America have input into this, and the bill will benefit from their input. The scares that have undermined consumer confidence in our food supply over the last several years have as oftentimes been as a result of international food products, imported food goods, as they have been domestic. This bill takes an important step forward in setting the same standards on imported food that we place upon domestically produced food as well. That is a major step in the right direction. One only need look at the controversy over baby formula, at the economic devastation that came from the misleading public statements by the FDA about tomatoes that were grown in America, which turned out to have been foodborne illness originating from jalapenos imported from Mexico, to learn the lesson that this legislation must apply the same standards to imported foods as it does to domestic. This legislation implements risk-based assessments, something that is very important as we look at the breadth and depth of the food industry as it has become globalized, as the world has grown smaller, as America's tastes and preferences have changed and they desire produce from Latin America and spices from Asia. These challenges will continue to grow. And this, by placing risk-based science into the bill, will allow us to build up and maintain public confidence in our food supply. And that's really the crux of the matter between our producers and our consumers. That on this issue of food safety, there is no distinction between the interests of the farmer and the shopper in the grocery store. Because the farmer loses out if FDA and USDA cannot rapidly and accurately trace back the source of foodborne illness. If they paint the industry with a broad brush, economic losses are severe. And so the interests of the farmer are that we have a modern, effective regulatory system. The interests of the consumer are that we have a modern, effective regulatory system so that they have a high level of confidence in the items that they purchase to put on their family's kitchen table. There must be the highest possible standard and the best possible science behind that law. As this issue moves forward, improvements can be made as it relates to the quarantine, as it relates to traceability, and most importantly, as it relates to the implementation of this bill for state and local governments, the state departments of agriculture and health, who by definition are delegated much of the responsibility by FDA to implement this legislation. They must have the resources and the authority and the full cooperation of FDA. There have been breakdowns in the past where FDA did not share as much as they should. This bill does much to address that and can do a bit more. And in an era where organic farming continues to grow in popularity, we must be sensitive to these ever-changing forms and trends in American agriculture. With that, I'm proud to support the legislation, and I appreciate the leadership of my friend from Illinois and my friend from Michigan on this issue, and I yield back to the gentleman.
Gentleman, yield to me just briefly.
I would.
I want to commend the gentleman not just for a fine statement, but also for the long and strong support he has given for this kind of legislation, protection for industry and for the consumers. I'd like to observe that the concerns the gentleman has expressed are very valuable and are included in the legislation, particularly in seeing to it that foreigners now have to meet the same requirement that Americans do. Americans produce and process safe food. Foreigners do not. This will assure our people that they can rely on Food and Drug to protect them, not just from American producers and from American processors, but also from the foreigners who are slipping in dangerous substances. And I want to commend the gentleman and thank him.
I thank the Chairman Emeritus and Dean of the House, and I yield back my time to the gentleman from Illinois.